When you think of 1980s cinema, what directors come to mind? Maybe Steven Spielberg, Brian De Palma, John Landis, or maybe even this guy. Chances are, if you were a teenager growing up in the 80s, or even a teenager nowadays, you've at least heard or seen one of John Hughes' films. Mainly because he focused on making teen comedies and coming-of-age films that can only resonate perfectly with, well, teenagers. He has such an established filmography among teenagers, with classics such as 16 Candles, Weird Science. Even films he made outside of teen comedies, such as Uncle Buck and Planes, Trains and Automobiles, are also beloved classics. But today I want to discuss arguably his two best films, The Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Both released in back-to-back years, and yet I just can't decide which one's better for the life of me. So I thought I should compare the two, since many people consider one or the other to be Hughes' magnum opus. And just to explain a little more, I'm going to be comparing them in 7 rounds. And I'll give a point to each film that has the better blank, insert here, I don't know, in their film. So whoever scores 4 or more is the winner. The battle will be legendary. If at the end the movie you wanted to win doesn't win, then that's fine because this is just my opinion. Okay, first segment. Openings are key. They decide whether the viewers are going to stick around or not. So how do both fetch up? Also, quick disclaimer, I'll be using the first 5 minutes as my definition for the opening. Firstly, The Breakfast Club, which has Brian narrate over images of the school, which not only establishes the location, but also tells us the characters we'll be left with for the next 90 minutes. This is then perfectly expanded upon with the introduction of the main characters, who are all easily identified by how they act, and how they talk. We don't need to be shown who the basket case and the athlete are, because we are given the dots to connect 2 and 2. It's not hard.
That's what she.
The next scene in which the students meet in the library with the principal is fine, as it expands on the characters' stereotypes and is the only time in which I would call this movie generic, which is unfortunate because this is probably the least generic teen comedy of all time. Honestly, the only thing that wasn't generic was Bender's dig about how Vernon raided Barry Manilow's wardrobe.
Yeah, I got a question. Does Barry Manilow know that you raid his wardrobe?
Yes.
Compare this to Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where, with one scream,
Tom!
and one cut to Ferris's face, we're already thrown into conflict. If there's one thing this scene has compared to The Breakfast Club, it's relatability, as we've all pretended to give a Laurence Olivier-style performance in order to stay off school, which helps us connect with Ferris's character, especially when he's taunting his sister. But then it all changes with one simple line.
They bought it.
This alone flips everything we thought we knew about Ferris up until that point, and brings in a technique that this movie excels at, breaking the fourth wall. It gives us comedic jabs, and insight into how Ferris gets away, and will get away once again with being sick. And most importantly, that he did indeed have a test, which makes me laugh that this is the line he needs to tell the audience, to get us to sympathise with his antics, and that's why Ferris takes the lead with this segment. Ferris Bueller's Day Off has so many characters that just bring charisma and wackiness whenever they're on screen, such as the 2 garage attendees who steal Cameron's dad's Ferrari. Even though their screen time is limited, any little thing they do is magic, from the little celebration after getting away with recklessly driving the Ferrari, and one of the guy's cheeky responses to Ferris when he asks him if he speaks English. Another duo this film excels with is Grace and Ed. Both despise each other but also bring out excellent chemistry when they're getting pranked by Cameron, which is why when Ed goes off to try and find Ferris, my enjoyment of his character slowly shrinks. Exactly like Ed's will to live. But no other characters are as fun to watch as the main 3. Ferris, Cameron and Sloane. This is probably because Ferris and Cameron are opposites, and Sloane tries to be neutral towards all their actions that are both put forward, which leads to iconic scenes like the parade and nearly getting caught by Ferris's dad at the restaurant. They bounce incredibly well off of everyone they encounter, but unfortunately I can't say the same for some characters, like Jeannie and Ferris's dad. After rewatching it, I'm only just realised that these 2 characters don't even interact, which is a shame. But how does The Breakfast Club's characters hold up? Surely they all don't bounce off each other as well as the characters in Ferris Bueller. Oh, I see. I think a very big reason for this is because of how very few characters there are in the film, with there only being 7 named characters. But that allows time for the characters to get to know each other, and build from what they all think they are, to what they know they are by the end. It's like the saying, less is more. Even the main 5 have an equal amount of screen time. That allows us to sympathise with each one, despite the feuds they have along the way, which is something you rarely see in a film, let alone a teen comedy. So, give me that. Breakfast Club, here you go. Come on, it's the 80s, I had to. Starting with Ferris Bueller, and I'm not saying that because I think the soundtrack for the film is bad, it's just I didn't think that some of the songs were part of the soundtrack. Honestly, I thought it was the score. I can't play the music because of copyright reasons. Thanks YouTube. But some songs like the one that plays while Ferris is running home, I legitimately thought was the score. It is a pretty good song and fits well with the rebellious style of the scene. And when you hear this song, you think of this film. But you can't say the same for the other songs. Twist and Shout by the Beatles, for example, is a great song. Everyone in their toaster already knows that. But when you hear the song outside of the film, are you really thinking about Ferris delivering a fiery performance at a parade? I don't think so. Whilst for the Breakfast Club soundtrack, every single song fits. When you hear Don't You Forget About Me by Simple Minds, you think of this iconic shot. When you hear Fire in the Twilight, you think of the five running frantically in the hallway. Heck, even the band who made the song know how well their song fit with the hallway scene, that they reenacted it in their music video for the song, of a guy frantically running. Also, though some of these songs come out of nowhere from a calm or serious scene, they all feel like releases that leave you with adrenaline sky high in the moment. So this segment is no contest. And since this is probably the only time I'll mention Simple Minds on my channel, listen to Promised You a Miracle. It's an amazing song. Do it. Do it now. Do it! The Breakfast Club has some of the best dialogue between any teenage characters in any film. Because this guy wrote it. Oh yeah, I already introduced him. The reason for this is because of John himself. He doesn't see teenagers as extraterrestrials or as super beings. Never seen Twilight, just using that as an example from the few clips I have seen. He himself says he sees them as maturing adults, and that shows in the Breakfast Club from the beginning, when the group are trying to stop Bender from pulling out a screw in the door. There's harsh digs at Bender's actions, and also concerns that he'll get in trouble written in, which at the same time reflects the innocence of children and the harsh reality of adults. Along with that, there are also many lines that are precise in the moment, like this line before Bender takes out the screw.
Come on, Bender, don't screw around.
I only noticed this on my 5th viewing, but even if it was accidentally written in, it's still too perfect. And this can also be seen with Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Do I have to say Ferris Bueller's Day Off every time? Can't I just say Ferris Bueller to save time? So Ferris Bueller's script is also great, as it also understands how teenagers talk through the interactions with Ferris and Cameron especially. Through their constant clashes and crazy antics together, it's very believable that they've been friends for years. But outside of that is where I draw the line. Whenever adults and teenagers interact in a movie, it feels sometimes unnatural. Especially when Ed is interacting with Sloane. We had one whole scene of him acting fierce, until Cameron prank calls him into thinking he's Sloane's father. But before her quote-unquote father picks her up, Ed seems a little startled, which is normal considering what happened. Grace! But when Sloane's dad shows up, he goes from being startled, but goes back to being calm and cunning in an instant. Plus, when comparing this to the dialogue shared between Principal Vernon and Bender, and how each line they throw at each other feels like a constant arrange of chess moves, especially the scene where Bender says "eat my shorts," shows that this segment is once again no contest. Both films are very funny, but I gotta talk about Ferris Bueller a lot more in this segment because of one simple filmmaking technique: editing. No joke, this is one of the best edited films I've ever seen because of how well it uses cuts. One clear example of this is when Ed and Grace think Ferris is prank calling them, only for them to call back who they think is Sloane's father, only for it to cut to Cameron doing a funny voice. The build up to that scene is phenomenal. If you're going to watch a short clip on Ferris Bueller to pass the time, I'd recommend this scene. Another great example of quick cuts is the iconic scene where Cameron goes berserk. The breaking of the fourth wall, the cut to black that zooms out until we realise it's Cameron's mouth, to the unnecessary shots of Chicago, are so perfectly placed and iconic. Also, the fourth wall breaking this movie from Ferris brings in so many iconic one-liners that are always hilarious even after numerous rewatches, and has without a doubt, undisputably, the best after-credits scene in any movie ever.
Suck on that, Marvel. Do better.
Now, compare all this to The Breakfast Club, and it does have some funny bits, mostly to do with John Bender. I feel like he's the only character I'm mentioning at this point. But here I'm definitely fine with mentioning him a lot, because the majority of the comedy in this movie is simply Bender throwing insults and witty remarks at others. And whilst these are funny, the comedy is not nearly as creative as Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Grace! Heck, most people in Ferris Bueller have funny lines, such as the way Ed shouts Grace, and Jeannie mocking other students who think Ferris is actually sick. They all do something that is memorable. For The Breakfast Club, I don't even think characters like Claire and Brian have any comedy towards them. They're all just being carried by the great John Bender. But unfortunately here, he couldn't get them over the line.
Here's where Bender goes berserk.
This was definitely the closest one to call out of the 7 segments I've selected for this video. On one hand, you have a film that manages to diversify its tones by having comedic, serious and light-hearted moments. But on the other hand, you have a film that fully embraces one consistent comedic tone. I think a fair way to settle this is how each film's distinct tone managed to fit with its story. The Breakfast Club's tone is mostly serious, mixed with comedy, which is spot on for a teen comedy. The teenage target audience are going to be searching for more mature films to watch, yet still hold on to a sense of childhood splashed in there, which is visible in the quick change in tone from doing to talking about their horrible experiences in school, then to a dance montage. Though it's inconsistent, its inconsistency makes sense, and keeps teenagers who have low attention spans from feeling bored. With Ferris Bueller, its comedic tone throughout keeps teenagers hooked from the beginning, with that one iconic line.
They bought.
There are serious moments throughout the movie that could affect Ferris, like how Cameron kicks the Ferrari off the house, and Ferris wants to take the blame, and when he gets caught by Ed Rooney for skipping school. However, both of these times are quickly de-escalated, and revert back to their comedic tones, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. If you're sad and looking for a film with a comedic tone consistently for 90 minutes, this is definitely a great pick. And for The Breakfast Club, if you want a solid film that's unpredictable with its tone, as well as its plots and interesting characters, this is also a great pick. Not sure if saying that has helped me come to a conclusion for this segment. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't even know which film is better tonally.
Can I give this segment a tie? No?
Well, I'm gonna! This is also a close one, as both utilise music to heighten the experience, and one ends on an iconic line, and one ends on an iconic shot. The ending chase in Ferris Bueller does have you on edge from the minute Jeannie nearly runs over Ferris, as well as that music dominating your ears. And heck, not only does it continue with its comedy, such as when Ferris goes back for the sunbathing women, and when he steals a beer from the man having a barbecue, but it's also really well shot, with handheld shots of Ferris running to give the idea that we're running with him, further heightening the already heightened experience. However, as soon as Ferris gets by Ed with the help from his sister, you can pretty much guarantee Ferris's safety, even if you've never seen the film before. Along with Ferris making some unrealistic noises and awkward responses is somewhat underwhelming. But luckily it's saved by Ferris's perfectly timed sigh and that iconic line, so it definitely gets a pass. For The Breakfast Club, it leaves the audience pondering, will the students still be friends on Monday? Which I think we can all agree is a better question to ask ourselves than, did Ferris's parents ever find out about his day off? It also leaves us wondering if all the relationships will last. You know the relationships, Claire and Bender, Alison and Andrew, Brian and his essay. It's okay, Brian, I've been there. But what brings all the students even closer than before is all of them pinching in during the ending monologue. Prior to the opening monologue, when it's just Brian, alone, by himself, I think the guy may need a hug. And of course, that final shot. When you think of teen comedies, a majority of people will probably think of this shot. See this, guys? This is how you settle a segment. So, here's the result. Breakfast Club wins, I guess.
Could you just hold on for 1 second?
Oh, okay.
Sublime!
Even though that is not how I feel about those movies whatsoever, I still love both of these movies equally as much, because so much thought and care was put into them by its director, and thanks to that, they are some of the most brilliantly aged films you'll ever see. I should also do a ranking like I did with my Kubrick video, since John Hughes only directed 8 films. Home Alone 1 and 2 and Pretty in Pink don't count, unfortunately. But if I only had to rank 8 films, that would make my whole life easier. Unless I were to rank both Ferris Bueller's Day Off and The Breakfast Club in the video, which means this video right here would be meaningless. There's still loads of other factors I've yet to take into account, like the theories. Oh my, the theories. Like the one where Bender comes back every week with new people, and this was the one week where he made new friends, which would explain why he raised his fist in celebration at the end. On the other hand, you have the theory that Ferris is only a figure of Cameron's imagination. Not sure what the connection is there. Maybe it's the character growth that Cameron has, and the lack that Ferris has.
Do you think he'll ever decide which John Hughes movie is better?
No.